Welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton, and welcome to another opposition view show where we're looking ahead to our next game, which is away to Southampton. Today we're speaking to Matthew Markstone, who's with us today from the Southampton fan podcast Dell-ivery. Now we get to have many a different opposition fan on this show from far and wide, but Matt is on another level. We're lucky enough to have our first ever American on the opposition view shows, with Matt joining us today all the way from California. Despite being on the other side of the globe, Matt's a Saints fanatic, as you can tell by his little setup that he's got going on behind him. And he's here to give us some insight into what we can expect from Southampton this weekend. First of all, how are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing quite well, James. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Look, we're really pleased to have you on. Like I say, first American on the show, so breaking new ground here.
Hopefully I don't mess it up for everybody.
Oh, don't worry. I'm sure you'll do your country proud. Before we start, like I say, you come from Central California. So what brought you to support Southampton? Is there a connection there?
No. In fact, it just happened to be that as I was looking to support a Premier League team, my son wanted to get into football. And so we started looking at teams around England. And I'm a big Houston Astros fan. And unfortunately, we just lost the World Series, but their big thing is their academy system, or their farm system, as we call it here in the States.
Oh yeah.
And so that development was there. And also I'm a teacher, and the school I teach at, we're also the Saints. We're also red and white, so it gives me an excuse to wear the
jersey connections, really, isn't there?
Yeah. So all good here, and easy choice in the end. Been a bumpy ride since then, but it's all right.
I think supporting any non-top six team is always going to be a bumpy ride. I can tell you that from my experience. On to the game now, as always, we start with how Southampton's season's gone so far. The stats read 2 wins, 2 draws, 7 defeats in the league, 11 games played. You're in the relegation zone, and unfortunately for us as Everton fans, that puts you just 1 place below us. So what's gone wrong so far for the Saints?
Well, I think a lot of people came into the season, myself included, expecting us to be, clear of relegation, having had Ralph Hasenhüttl have a full summer with the squad, being able to bring in a couple of players, but things just haven't quite clicked. And I think there hasn't been a huge turnover in the squad since Hughes was in charge, even since Pellegrino was in charge. And in the end, I think it doesn't really matter at this point who the manager is going to be if the players there can't do the job. And we saw last week against City, we can defend for large portions of a game if that's all we're asked to do. But to play this kind of high pressing, kind of expansive football, we can't seem to be able to put that together. So I would say that for the most part, it's been the fact that the guys just haven't scored the goals we needed. Only really Danny Ings is scoring, and we're just making too many errors defensively to stay in games, and it's been quite frustrating. But I still think the majority of the fan base is behind the manager. Still, people are angry at the administration and things like that. But everybody's behind the manager, and we're there. We're just not putting it together all on the pitch yet.
Well, that was a question I was about to ask you, actually, is that both managers go into this game under a lot of scrutiny because of the positions. I was going to say, what is the general opinion from Southampton fans towards Hasenhüttl? Does he need more time, or is he one bad game away from being fired?
Well, some of those reports came out this week, and as far as I can tell, most of the fans that I talked to, nobody believes him. Those seem to be media hype. The fact that you're in the relegation zone means that anybody looking at it from the outside could see why potentially the manager could be fired. But all the fans, for the most part, look at Hasenhüttl and say he's the man for the job. He's probably the best manager we're going to get, and we just have to give him some time. And there has been a little bit of question over him losing his assistant coach who went to Bayern Munich, and since then things have fallen apart a little bit. But really, I think he's the man for the job, and we just have to give him more time and hope we get guys back healthy. And once we do that, I think we'll be all right.
That's very similar, actually, to Everton's situation, who we did relatively well last season under Marco Silva, and then he lost his assistant manager, who went to take a manager's job somewhere else, and we've struggled since. So I can kind of understand how maybe Hasenhüttl's struggling a little bit without his assistant.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hasenhüttl is he comes off as a workaholic. He doesn't deny it, and sometimes you can see it on his face. On by the time he gets to Saturday, he's not maybe doesn't have all that much energy left, and he looks a little frazzled and trying to do too much once the assistant coach is gone. But they have replaced him, and I think with time things will turn around. But people will start to get anxious as we move closer and closer to the midpoint of the season with still being in the relegation zone. And I think the only real positive that we could say is there is a style there. There is a style that he wants to implement. Whereas I would say under Hughes and under Pellegrino, there wasn't a cohesive kind of movement towards something to play each and every week. Obviously against City last week, we kind of abandoned that style and just sat really deep. And if we do that against you guys at home, we'll be in trouble because the fans will get on all over everybody. But I expect us to set up a little bit differently this time next week.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. You're worried about Mark Hughes and Pellegrino not having cohesive styles. That's a bit of an issue that's been thrown at Marco Silva at times. Has he really figured out what he wants Everton to be under him? And it could well be his undoing. Like you say, Hasenhüttl seems to be getting a lot of backing off your fans. You seem very confident that Hasenhüttl can turn it around for you guys. But a lot of Everton fans don't think Marco Silva can do the same. What's your opinion on that?
I guess I would say that a lot of Southampton fans wanted Marco Silva at Southampton. And we were, under the impression that potentially we could get him. And I think a lot of us feel pretty happy that we didn't actually. That the short-term success that he was able to bring hasn't been able to carry over at Everton. And you guys have been in a bit of a situation where obviously Koeman went from us to you, and that didn't work out. But I don't know if Silva can do it. I mean, I would question some of his decisions, some of the way the team is set up. You guys, your squad is not cheap, and you would expect him to be doing a lot better with the guys that he has there. And so I don't know if changing the manager is always the key, but sometimes you just have to do it to freshen things up and hope you get the right appointment the next time.
Well, that's the thing. I think we've appointed so many managers and got it wrong is that we don't know what to do next. I think that's right. A lot of the issues amongst the fans right now. They're thinking, if we do sack Marco Silva, who do we appoint next? And it's a very difficult situation to be in at the moment.
Yeah, well, you don't want to get into the habit of just appointing one of the firefighters and getting somebody that's going to set up super defensively and get you through the season, and then you'll feel like you have to appoint them for the following season, and then nobody's happy. I mean, you guys have been there, you guys have done that, and so maybe the key is to stick with Silva, but I don't want to put your fan base through something like that if it's not for you,
Yeah, it's a bit of a difficult one, really, at the situation with Marco Silva, but obviously you seem very confident that Hasenhüttl can turn this around at Southampton.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't think he could possibly play a better team than Everton if you want to turn things around, because we seem to be the saving grace for teams who are struggling. They come up against us and then they get the win that they've been waiting for with such a soft touch, as you might have seen the horrific injury to Andre Gomez last week and the fallout that followed that with Son and Tottenham and what's been going on this week. But Everton fans are kind of upset that we haven't taken more of a stand on the way we've been treated, and I think we've been getting a lot of wrong decisions going against us, even with the help of VAR at times lately. And I think a lot of fans are upset with Marco Silva, but also his bosses above him, who maybe we aren't speaking up for ourselves enough and taking a stand against what a lot of fans are convinced is quite an injustice against us. And I think that's one thing that a lot of Everton fans are upset with, is that Everton's become a bit of a soft touch, and maybe that could give you guys the boost you need, given that you need to bounce back from a set of bad results.
Yeah. I mean, we are definitely we've had a difficult start to the season. You look at some of the teams we've hosted at home, they've been fairly difficult. And now we're going into and this is no offense to Everton, but we're going into a run of fixtures now where we would expect to pick up more points. And I think if I'm pretty confident that Hasenhüttl can do it, but if we go into Christmas and we haven't picked up a lot of points from this run of fixtures we have, I think you'll start to see more people turn. But yeah, I would expect us to press a little bit and to be a little bit more to push higher up the field. And unfortunately, the one outlet you guys will have is if Yannick Vestergaard plays, you'll have people that can run in behind him down your right-hand side, our left-hand side. And with Bertrand out suspended for a straight red, we'll have some issues at left back again. So you could see our captain, Højbjerg, over there filling in. You could see kind of just the absence of a true left back or any kind of left back. It could just have a left-sided player playing behind the midfielder somewhere. And if that's the case, you guys will definitely have some stuff there. But yeah, we need to push forward. The home fans have been unhappy with how things have gone. We haven't played very well at home. We've played much better on the road. I actually probably prefer to play most matches on the road right now, just because the team seems to play a bit better with a bit more freedom and a bit less pressure on them. So if you can survive, maybe I would say the first 10 to 12 minutes, if you can get through that kind of unscathed and show that you have some composure on the ball and are holding the ball and forcing us to kind of run and chase you around, the fans, I think, will start to get tired of it, and it won't take very long for everybody to kind of just become silent, and then for you guys to kind of be able to control the game if you can do that.
Yeah, well, as Everton fans, I think we know what that's like, where we can often, if we underperform, the fans get very restless quite quickly, and standards are quite high amongst our fans, and it's clear this team that we've got at the moment isn't anywhere near those lofty standards, and it's kind of the reason why maybe we struggle to keep rebuilding, because managers maybe don't get enough time, but there's a lot more disdain towards Marco Silva, maybe because of his personality as well, where he's not, like I say, he's not taking a stand against these bad decisions that are going against us. And I think everyone's just very convinced right now that Everton's a bit of a pushover, and that's the opposite of what Everton should be in terms of what they've been in over the years. And I think that's what's upsetting the fans more than anything else. Obviously, like I say, we poached Ronald Koeman from you guys, and you always seem to be really good at rebuilding Southampton after you lost a manager or a key player, but that seems to have dried up in the last couple of years. What sort of changed, and why has it been less successful?
I think that I mentioned my love of the recruitment and kind of the academy system, and I think we went through a run where we were maybe slightly ahead of the curve in terms of being able to recruit from outside the Premier League and finding players, and we were kind of always playing this game where we were willing to let players go, and then we were really good at identifying that talent, but it only takes a couple of misses to have that happen. We had Wanyama go away from us. We had Schneiderlin go away from us, and the guys we replaced them with were not quite up to that level, and so we took a couple of years off there.
Who did you replace those guys with?
Well, I mean, we have Oriol Romeo and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg now, who are decent players, but if you look at the kind of destroyer that Wanyama was, Romeo is not quite there. He's a little bit slower on the ball. His passing is probably not quite as good. He's not quite as quick. And Schneiderlin, I think you look around at people we would gladly accept back at Southampton, and he is definitely a guy that a lot of fans would take. Though if he plays, he may get booed just because people are upset he's gone. But I think that a lot of us would take him back in our midfield in a heartbeat right now. And I mean, now we have James Ward-Prowse kind of playing in the system as well, but we're playing with kind of like a 5-3-2 or a 3-5-2, depending on how we set up. And so we have these kind of three midfielders in there, and none of them are really true, I would say, box-to-box midfielders. None of them are going to dribble by people. We have guys who can pass side to side and who can play defense and who can make tackles. But then you get to James Ward-Prowse, who is great from a dead ball situation. Managed to score a goal last week, but really people are disappointed with his performance over the past couple of seasons. They feel like he hasn't reached the levels that he maybe should have done, and we still look at the guys like Schneiderlin and wish we had them back.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because as a result of Andre Gomez's horror injury last week, it looks as though Schneiderlin may be set to play against Saints on Saturday. So what sort of reception could Schneiderlin
Well, I mean, I kind of think he may get booed a little bit, but I think the most of the fans will applaud him, especially maybe at the end of the game, or if he gets subbed off or something like that. I think he'll be done. And of course, we're all kind of hoping that he has maybe a bit of a bad game and isn't great on the ball. But
that's very possible, to be honest, because
yeah.
I found you guys say you long for him to come back, maybe, but at Everton, he's widely unpopular. He's considered to be quite lazy, a bit too slack. Maybe he seems to be a weak point in the team at times, and I think so. If he does play, it may well be of a benefit to you guys. And if you're saying you're wishing for him to have a bad game, there's a very good chance he might.
Yeah. And that's he's not unlike other players who have gone on and not really reached the heights they claimed they were going to reach. Even Wanyama, who went to Spurs and kind of never really established himself in the team. And you look at guys like Luke Shaw, who have suffered injuries and then struggled to get back in the team and things like that. I won't bring up any of the other guys who went elsewhere, but they, some of them didn't quite do as well as they thought they were going to.
You have had your fair share. You have had your fair share. Like we've had Callum Chambers as well. I often forget he played for you guys.
Yeah.
And of course, our own Theo Walcott
mm-hmm.
a long time ago was a Saints player. So I think there's plenty of evidence of how good your academy setup is, and I think Everton used to be famed for it themselves, but it seems to have dried up under Marco Silva, which is another issue that the fans seem to have, is that he's not maybe willing to give our youth players a chance. Obviously, that doesn't seem to be an issue with Saints.
No, not right now. And especially early last season when Hasenhüttl first came in, the first thing he did was bring a bunch of youth players into first team training. Lots of team issued images of young kids training with the first team players, giving guys a hard time making tackles, and you can see the kind of change in the increase in intensity in training. And then a lot of guys got their kind of their debuts under Hasenhüttl early on, but since then he's kind of stopped that a little bit. And whether it's just the idea that, hey, these guys aren't quite good enough, so let's put them out on loan and get them some first team games at maybe a lower level. But then we had a guy go to like a non-league team, and after he got his debut last year, Tyreek Johnson. So that's a little bit concerning. But Hasenhüttl definitely doing more with the youth team. He's present at games and matches. He's present at their training. We've gone through a bit of a shuffle with the U23 coach being moved around. So I'm not sure what's happening there yet, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But yeah, the youth team players coming through, still putting some pressure on the first team players. And if they're not performing, they run the risk of being substituted and moved or kind of replaced in the matchday squad. But the one side I would say that hasn't happened is with Ryan Bertrand's suspension and us having sold Nat Target over the summer. We have a guy in Jake Vokins playing for the under-23s that hasn't been given a shot yet. And I think a lot of us are wondering why not. And I think at this point, 11 games into the season, with Bertrand having been injured early in the season and us choosing to play a guy like Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who's a midfielder, or Kevin Danzo, who's a center back, or even Cedric, who's a right back, playing him over at left back over a traditional left back in Jake Vokins, I think it's a sign that maybe Jake just isn't quite up for it and he's not going to get a shot. So I would expect us to take a look to at least bring somebody in at the youth level to challenge Vokins for his spot at the U23s, and hopefully bring in somebody behind Bertrand eventually, simply because Bertrand is aging, is still very good, but obviously made the mistake against a couple weeks ago and cost us 3 games. So we'll see how
that
moves out in the future.
Yeah. Less said about that game, the better, of course. But
thank you.
It's been an underwhelming season so far. But you were talking about a couple of your players there. Has there been a player who stood out as a positive, maybe, for Southampton?
I would say Danny Ings right now has been fantastic. He's the only guy who's scoring. He's not scoring, I would say wonderful goals, but he's there. But the guy who I would say has been the real spark is the new signing, Moussa Djenepo. The goals that he has scored have been, I don't know if you remember Sofiane Boufal's goal against West Brom a couple of seasons ago, where he kind of slalomed through the entire team and
I remember
made defenders run into each other, all that stuff. He's been able to do things like that. He's shrugging off defenders and using his speed and his elusiveness. So he is back. He was injured for a while. He came back in last week. So if he makes the start this week, that brings some real dynamism to our team. So if you have some sort of front three, or maybe he's playing a little deeper on the left-hand side, you'll see him and Redmond and Ings really probably run, cause you guys some trouble, just because he doesn't seem to have a worry. He doesn't seem to have a care. He doesn't know any better. He's so young and just kind of goes out and plays. And I think the fans will appreciate that. Hopefully he's up to full fitness now, after having kind of tested it out a little bit last week. But yeah, I think you can watch out for him. He's really the excitement, even though Danny Ings is the guy scoring kind of all the goals. Most of them have been deflections and blocking goalkeeper mistakes and things like that. So we'll take those too, but we would all like to see some goals to go up for goal of the week and things like that.
You say like that these sorts of exuberant young players can often lift the team, I think, and lift the fans when you're in these kind of situations. I mean, Everton have had it in the past, obviously, with Wayne Rooney. When he was very young, we were a very bad team at that time, and he sort of lifted us like that. So perhaps, like, if you start to bring more young players through, maybe like your left back and a few others, you might just see an improvement. It's sometimes hard to trust youth players in times of crisis, but sometimes the gamble can pay off.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes the fans are more willing to give them a little bit more leeway. We want to see them grow.
Definitely.
We want to see them come through. So we've reached saturation with a couple of guys, and I would say that Ward-Prowse is there. He's played over 200 matches for the team. He's on his best run of form, and I think I criticized him a little bit earlier, but in terms of goal scoring, this is the best run of form he's ever had under Hasenhüttl. But still, people feel he's not quite doing enough, and I can see that without a doubt.
I remember he was very, very highly rated a few years ago, Ward-Prowse.
Yeah.
So I can understand the frustration maybe if he hasn't kicked on.
Yeah, and I think we all. I also think though that we all kind of overvalue what we have, right? We all look at some of the players and go, "This guy is either the best or he is terrible." There's no kind of, we don't want them to be in between. And I think maybe the expectations for Ward-Prowse were a little high, and he's a guy who's getting in the starting lineup every single week. Like, he's a pretty good footballer. He's just not. Maybe he's not elite level. He's not getting really looked at for England at this moment. Nor is Nathan Redmond, and that's disappointing. But at the end of the day, like, you look around and look at some of the guys that he has to compete with, and look at some of the selections that Gareth Southgate makes, and you just go, well, there's not much we can do there, I guess.
Well, you say maybe these sort of players, homegrown players, can often be under a bit more pressure by the club to maybe succeed, but we've got one of our own, Tom Davies, who's very similar to Ward-Prowse in the sense that he's been playing for Everton since he was very young. He's now about 21, 22. And sometimes he can sort of get criticised just because he hasn't kicked on the way we thought he might. But he is a pretty decent player, and no doubt he's going to have a very pivotal role in central midfield now Gomez is out.
Yeah, and I remember him coming through a couple of, I think it was a couple seasons ago, where he kind of, those first impressions, I think if you come on and have a strong first impression, that'll buy you some time, but also it sets the expectation, the bar rises for you, And then if you come in and play the best game of your life that first game or the first couple of weeks, then everybody kind of goes, well, we expect them to progress just on this kind of linear path, and it doesn't happen that way. So he's 21. He's a midfield player. Like, you give him some time. Like, he has plenty of time to grow and to wise up. And maybe physically he's at his peak, but the mental side of the game is a big deal too. His decision making will come along maybe a little bit better. But if I can remember correctly, I think he hurt us a little bit not long ago. So I'm not all that excited about him potentially doing that to us again.
No, he is quite a good player, and I personally rate him quite highly. But before we move on to the actual game this weekend, if you could have one Everton player in your team for this weekend's game, who would you go for?
That's, well, yeah, I'll just take Seamus Coleman.
Coleman,
just I think so. Just because we need some leadership in the back. We don't have a leader. We're a bit of a mess, and I think anybody with some sort of leadership that'll just settle things down and will be a kind of a calming force would be good. Not necessarily that position maybe is the most needed, but I think we could use it. And I think just his leadership would be there, and that will hopefully bring a little bit of calm to our team. I'll let the offensive guys, the guys up top, kind of figure things out, but we need to really sort things out at the back, and hopefully he can do that for us.
I'm surprised you didn't say Luca Dean, our left back, because, like you say, there's a bit of a crisis at left back, and also a lot of other fans who have spoken to on these shows have often gone with Luca Dean as our best player and the player they'd most like to have in their team.
Yeah, I could see that, and maybe I could second guess myself a little bit, but yeah, I just think leadership is what we need. I think if you talk to a lot of Southampton fans, we would have gladly signed somebody who was a bit older. We signed a young center back, a 21-year-old center back who was playing in the Bundesliga, but obviously not at the same level. Didn't play super well, or the team didn't perform super well last year in Augsburg. But we all would have taken somebody who could just provide some leadership. But that goes against the kind of ethos of the club. We won't sign anybody that's over the age, I think, of 24, 23. And so the lack of leadership there. We have Banya Yoshida, but he is, generally a center back who should be a sub. He should be on the bench and be there during training and come in when necessary, but he shouldn't be starting each and every week.
So you're looking for leadership on the pitch.
Yeah.
Out of interest, who is your club captain at the moment?
Pierre-Emile Højbjerg is the captain, young Danish midfielder, and he took it from Ryan Bertrand last season. And beyond that, it'll get passed around to a couple of guys, to Yoshida, to Oriol Romeu. At times Ward-Prowse will wear it, but for the most part, it's Højbjerg each and every day, and he really earned that, I think, last year, being the guy who came out going through a bad run of form where he was put in front of the camera each and every week to talk about the team, and he stepped up and did it and earned it, and I think a lot of the fans are happy with that. And once again, he was out there after that Leicester City defeat, and he finally just said, "Look, we're not going to talk anymore. We're just going to go and work and do stuff and get better." And the team social media accounts kind of went quiet for the entire week. They just trained. They showed up, played kind of a lackluster game midweek against City. Went quiet again. Showed up on Saturday and put in a great performance that I think a lot of us are proud of. And hopefully that means we're back to being Saints a little bit better than that. But we'll have to wait and see.
So on to the game then. What sort of lineup can we expect from Southampton?
Well, I mean, Ralph would prefer like a 4-2-2-2, but I think what you'll see is more of a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3. So you could expect three center backs, some combination of Jan Bednarak on the right, based on last week, Jack Stevens in the middle, probably Yannick Vestergaard on the left. I would expect Valerie to play as the right wing back. If Cedric is fully fit, maybe Cedric as left wing back, but if not, probably Højbjerg would shift over, and that would bring Romeu into the middle, Ward-Prowse there, and then they would probably do something like, whether it could be Ginebo, whether it could be kind of any other, maybe Buffal playing on the left somewhere, and then depending on if we go 3 or 2 up top, you'd wind up with probably Redmond and Ings. So
those
I think
two
that'll
seem to be the permanent fixtures in the attack.
Yeah, and that goes down to Adams got a run of games. Che Adams got a run of games at the beginning of the season, didn't score, struggled a little bit, and hasn't really been seen since, other than cameos coming on late in games. But he's lacking in confidence, so I it makes me think that we'll probably wind up with like a 3-5-2, a little bit more, and so I think you'll have Ginebo on the left somewhere, with that means Højbjerg, Romeu, and Ward-Prowse in the middle. Valerie on the right-hand side, and then the two attackers, Redmond and Ings, up top. And Redmond will do a lot of the running. Ings will drop deep if necessary, but he's also just a really smart kind of a goal scorer. He'll get himself into good positions. He'll link up play really well, and then it'll be Redmond who runs down the channel a little bit, and gives you guys some trouble there and presses you pretty high. So if we do press you high, and maybe you'll get to this, but if we do press you high, you will have space down your right hand side, our left hand side. Especially the only other time that Moussa Ginebo has ever played in that left kind of wingback role, it was a complete disaster. It was a real there was just giant holes down that side that teams could exploit. So I'm kind of hoping we don't do it, but I also think that maybe we will, just because we need to be able to play a little bit and to press you up top, I think, a little bit, and he'll allow us to do that as well.
It's going to be an interesting setup, given that both sides, like you say, are quite depleted. So it's hard to. Sometimes the managers have got to change the team setup a bit away from what they'd like it to be. So it could be a very interesting battle.
Yeah. It'll be one of those things where I guess Hasenhüttl will be kind of reluctant to roll this team out. It's not what he wants. He said it over and over, but he has to do it because I think it's what the players can do. And it's something I've been trying to work out this week for myself is we looked at what the defenders could do. Our three center backs, just a massive amount of clearances last week. Granted, most of them were because City was putting in aerial crosses to Sergio Aguero, where we have three guys who are well over 6 feet in the middle. So you would expect us to win those. But they're when there was backs to the wall kind of defending, they were great. And it's when we asked them to kind of play this high line against teams and play this kind of pressing football that they get exposed. And so you wonder, does Ralph go away from his philosophy overall and choose to sit deep? And can he do that against Everton? Because a lot of our fans are going to look at the table and they're going to say, well, why would you come home against a team that's one place ahead of you, and when we're sitting in the relegation zone, and sit back against them, so I don't expect him to do that either. But I would say that's probably what the team is best suited to do, is to sit back and play on the counter. But I don't think we can do that at home against Everton.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be an interesting setup, like I say, to see who comes out on top in the tactical battle. What is your prediction for the game?
Well, I'm not quite sure we can keep a clean sheet. And I guess I could see this going like 1-1 or 2-2. I can see us getting a draw and kind of maybe neither team being happy. I could also see us giving this away. We haven't won at home in quite some time. So I don't know. I won't predict us losing just because I refuse to do that. So I think I'll go 1-1. And it's not my favorite prediction, but I think it's probably the most likely.
Well, that's exactly what I had in mind as well. So it's 1-1 all around by the looks of it.
Yeah. And if I can say, I mean, last week you guys had a pretty tough game against Southampton. The first half, I know not very many people were very excited about, but obviously you lost Gomez to that injury, and I think for you guys to come back late in that game and get that equalizer, I think that could really be the difference for you guys. I mean, that's something you can. You guys, and I don't know if Marco Silva has anything to do with that, or that's just the team deciding, like, we're going to make sure we get this. And when you guys do that, I think if you carry that over to this week and come out against us pretty strong, and like I said, survive that first 10 to 15 minutes, or even give it back to us that 10 to 15 minutes, I think we can really be in trouble.
That's the thing. When Everton come out fighting, there's not many teams as good as them in terms of. But it's whether Everton can get themselves up for a game, and that's what can really annoy the fans sometimes. So, like you say, it's again, we're predicting 1-1 apiece, but it could literally be anything. You just don't know. With both of our teams, I don't think you know what team's gonna turn up.
Yeah, and that's frustrating because you just want some consistency from players. You want to see the cohesion and the movement and the kind of progression from week to week. And you would imagine that we would get more comfortable with what Ralph wants, and sometimes it just doesn't happen, and it does get frustrating. But in the end, you can only you got to cheer the guys on, even if they're having a bad day, and you kind of go back to the drawing board and try to figure out how you're supposed to feel about it all. But at the end of the day, we both want our teams to do well and both want them to win. So you just kind of do what you can.
Yeah, I think it's one of those. It's like I say, it's been a difficult season so far for both of us. So I think it's not guaranteed that everybody's going to go home happy, but we're going for one apiece, both of us here. We're almost out of time on the show now, but we always end on a bit of a light note, and given that you come from California, which is the home of film production, what's your favourite film and why?
So this is, I may be the one person from California I'm not a big pop culture movie guy.
Really?
No, I don't know what it was about my childhood that it's just absent. But I can say without a doubt, I'm a high school teacher. So I would say Billy Madison, probably my favorite movie of all time with Adam Sandler. And most of the jokes that I make, the person who helped me most in my formative years was Adam Sandler. I got a lot of laughs out of some uncomfortable situations because I could just be like him, yell like him, and from Happy Gilmore, and act like him from Billy Madison. So I would say Billy Madison. It's probably not topping any movie charts. Don't go watch it if you haven't seen it. It won't change your life, but definitely changed mine.
But it's shaped yours.
Absolutely.
There you go. It's like I say, it's a very interesting life that's been shaped there, of course, with a Southampton fan out there in California with not much interest in movies. You're a very interesting character, and it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show. So thanks for joining us, Matt.
Thank you so much, James. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, I've done us all right, despite some of my, I think, some definitely odd selections, but hopefully I've justified them a little bit.
You've done your country proud, mate. Don't worry about that. So there you have it, guys. It's Everton at Southampton on the South Coast on Saturday. Be sure to check out all the content in the build-up to that game, and also check out Dell-ivery, which is Matt's podcast. It's a very interesting podcast. And there you have it, guys. Thank you for tuning in on the Toffee Blues.